Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 254. For quite some time now, we've been wondering when investigators were going to get around to the financials. When were the forensic investigators going to dig in and start going through the transactions between Jeffrey Epstein and all of his co-conspirators? Well, there's a new report today that Denise George, the Attorney General of the Virgin Islands, has started digging. She has contacted Wells Fargo and several other financial institutions, and she wants some answers. She understands that there are many ways to skin a cat. And if you follow the money, well, you usually end up in the politician's office, right? What do we always say here on the podcast? If you follow the drugs, you end up at the drug dealers. But if you follow the money, well, you end up at the politicians. And that's the way it always works, right? And it's no different here. No different whatsoever. If they follow the money, it will lead them to some pretty promising places, I'm sure, as far as the investigation goes. And it looks like Denise George has started doing just that. Now, I'm pretty sure that they're doing that in New York as well. I'm pretty sure that Allison Moe and her team are also combing through the financials. They've talked about it. But now you see several different investigations into these financials, and you know that all of these people that were reaping the reward of Jeffrey Epstein's ill-gotten gains are in panic mode right now. So our article tonight is from Bloomberg. The authors were Neil Weinberg and Patricia Hurtado. Headline: Wells Fargo and others asked for details on Epstein money. Remember, this has been a huge focus of mine here on the podcast from the very beginning. When I first started covering this case, it was about the corruption angle. I had no idea the depths of the abuse in this case. Zero idea. But I knew that there was some funky corruption, and I also knew that there was a shit ton of money laundering going on. So that's why I first started following this case. And I'll tell you what, from then to now, I am 100% sure that there were epic financial crimes occurring. And not just here in the United States, folks, across international boundaries as well. And a lot of those people who were involved in these transactions aren't getting the proper press that they deserve. And I don't mean good press either. The spotlight should be on people like Glenn Dubin, Les Wexner, the Core Four, and Jean-Luc Brunel, just to start. And I don't see the legacy media pushing hard enough to put the spotlight on these people. But they'll be caught off surprise, I guess, when they start getting arrested and we start seeing financial crimes getting tacked on to what is already there. We won't be surprised, obviously. We know it's coming. But the legacy media, once again, well, you know, they never do their job. Financial institutions from Silicon Valley to Israel are being asked about money they may have handled from Jeffrey Epstein or entities linked to him, according to new court filings expanding the list of banks that could have insights into the late sex offender's finances. And again, these sorts of institutions, these financial institutions, Silicon Valley, it is littered with fellow travelers. Now, I'm not saying all of these people are, abusing kids or part of sex rings in Silicon Valley or the bankers. That's not what I mean by any stretch of the imagination. What I do mean, though, is these bankers specifically and these so-called moguls in Silicon Valley, they most certainly enabled Jeffrey Epstein's abuse of these children, and no doubt in some cases, some of them took part. But for the most part, these scumbags, they just facilitated the crimes. And there are severe penalties for that. When you start dicking around with money and you start, embezzling money and laundering money and committing wire fraud, there are huge repercussions for normal people when that occurs. So I expect these people to be treated the same way that you or I would be. 6 U.S.-based financial companies, Wells Fargo and Company, Citigroup Incorporated Citibank, Fidelity Investments, Charles Schwab Corporation, Northern Trust International Banking Corporation, and Silicon Valley Bank, as well as Israel's Bank Leumi, were subpoenaed in recent days by Virgin Islands Attorney General Denise George, who has filed a civil lawsuit against Epstein's estate seeking to recover money and to pay his survivors. National Financial Services, LLC, a unit of Fidelity, also received a subpoena in the matter. And now we heard about Deutsche Bank, right? We knew that was definitely going to come down the pipe eventually. We've heard about J.P. Morgan Chase. We just discussed them and their connections to Jeffrey Epstein and Jeffrey Epstein's financial crimes. We've talked about Barclays and Jess Staley. And now we could add these other financial institutions to the list. All of these people have obviously done business with Jeffrey Epstein or his shell companies or entities, and now Denise George has subpoenaed all of their financial records. So buckle up, folks. There's going to be some bombshells that come out of this, I think. The subpoenas request information from the banks about more than 24 partnerships, nonprofits, and other entities linked to Epstein. There is no indication that any of the banks were involved in wrongdoing. Yeah, just like Deutsche Bank wasn't involved in wrongdoing and they got that $150 million fine. Now look, I am not naive. I understand that the banksters rule the world. Other people will tell you other things, the cabal or whatever it may be. I personally believe that it's these financial scumbags who really control the world. What do you think? How do you... while they keep you under their thumb with their predatory loans and their high interest rates, they're living high on the hog. And meanwhile, while they're busy keeping you under their thumb, a modern-day slave to them, basically, they're busy hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein, living the high life, yucking it up, knowing there'll be no penalties for their relationships or for the crimes they commit. Look what happened after the financial crash. Did any of these people go to prison? Not one of them. Ask yourself, how is that even possible? These people breathe air that's even more rarefied than the air Epstein was breathing. We're talking about these bankers. These people are absolutely, positively a stain on the world. And it's not just one or two of them. All of these private wealth managers, etc., they don't give a damn about anything besides the consolidation of wealth and power. And you see it by their actions and by the clients they take on. Citibank, Wells Fargo, Fidelity, and Schwab had no immediate comment. Leumi, Silicon Valley Bank, and Northern Trust didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. So yeah, of course not. They don't, they have to get in their room with all of their crisis advisors and figure out the proper course of action. But does it shock anybody Wells Fargo's involved? I mean, really? How many scandals and scams has Wells Fargo been involved in? What sort of penalties have they received? And you have people worried about the 35 million Americans who might be getting a few extra bucks a week, and they're not worried about these banksters? So people will actually begrudge those people who have lost their jobs and who are relying on a little extra help right now, right? They'll get on the internet, they'll begrudge them, they'll talk shit, they'll, shit post and troll. But meanwhile, they just take every last little bit of abuse from their robber baron bankster owners. What a world we live in, folks. What a world. The subpoenas indicate that the Virgin Islands is casting a wide net in its hunt for Epstein's wealth. The bank disclosures, which are due to island authorities in 30 days, may provide potential clues into the still mysterious finances of Epstein, who was battling federal sex abuse charges when he died in a Manhattan jail cell last summer. His death ruled a suicide, allegedly. He had previously reported banking relationships over the years with Citibank, J.P. Morgan and Chase, and Deutsche Bank AG. Look, this guy had his tentacles everywhere. We know that. We know that it was many, many different institutions that were doing business with this man. Not just Deutsche Bank, not just J.P. Morgan, but all of these places, basically. And that doesn't even begin to talk about the bags of cash he gave to people. You know, how many of these scientists claimed all the money that was given out to them? Off the books. Oh, it wasn't accepted through the charity at Harvard. It was off the books. Oh, yeah, okay. So I'm sure that none of that money that they received was from ill-gotten gains, right? It is such a joke. It is such an absolute joke to see all of these people who were involved, all of these people who enriched themselves off of Jeffrey Epstein's criminal enterprise not be up against it. But that, my friends, that day might be coming, because it most certainly looks like the Virgin Islands here and Denise George are doing a pretty deep dive into some of the finances. And guess what? We all know money is a big motivator in life for just about everybody, and Denise George is no different. Remember, she wants some of this money for the Virgin Islands. She feels like they have been wronged somehow. I obviously disagree with that. I think that they played a part in facilitating Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, not her, per se, or the people of the Virgin Islands, obviously, but of course they're scummy elected officials, the ones that gave him the permits, the ones that gave him the tax exemptions, the ones that were accepting money from him, okay? So that now means your island, unfortunately, those who were in charge of the island at the time, they participated. They were enabling. So I don't want to hear nothing about the Virgin Islands thinking they're going to get some money. Find this money, put it all into that trust, and make sure the survivors get every last penny. The Virgin Islands sued Epstein's estate and 6 related companies in a local court in January, alleging violation of the territory's, very important line here, folks, criminal racketeering law. It is seeking civil penalties and damages, forfeiture of Epstein's private island in the territory, and restitution for his sexual abuse survivors. A civil criminal racketeering case. That is called a predicate for a criminal racketeering case. And as the smoke begins to clear and the dust begins to settle, it becomes more and more obvious to me by the day that the scope of this investigation is going to be very, very large. Authorities on the island are also conducting a criminal investigation into whether Epstein's longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell participated in his criminal sex trafficking ring. Maxwell was arrested this month in a separate probe involving similar charges brought by federal prosecutors in Manhattan. She has pleaded not guilty. And again, this is huge, and this is why I want New Mexico to do the same thing. New Mexico should be running a concurrent case right now, and they should be going hard in the paint. Zorro Ranch needs to be seized, needs to be sold off, and the secrets that have been held there need to be revealed. Because there is a lot more that occurred in New Mexico than we even know, folks. And hopefully, with some of these dumps, some of these document dumps that are going to be coming out, we'll get a little bit more of a handle on what occurred there. But there are people out there that know, the people that work there. The pilot, Larry Visosky. Chefs, maids, butlers. All of these people that were around all the time in New Mexico must come forward. They must come forward and they must tell the authorities what they know. And if they don't come forward of their own will, then they must be subpoenaed. But, again, in New Mexico, All is well. Nothing occurred there, I guess. We'll just let the feds deal with it. Can you imagine? If I lived in New Mexico, I'd be absolutely insane over this. But here we are. George, the island's attorney general, is asking the financial institutions for account statements, deposit and withdrawal slips, information about the source and destination of funds, and the identity of those requesting the transactions. She is also seeking internal bank memos, phone records, internal correspondence, and documentation of any internal due diligence or investigations related to the accounts. All right, so what she's looking for there is the whole entire bundle. She wants the FinCEN database reports. She wants the suspicious activity reports, Title 31 reports, anything that has to do with money moving in and out, she wants to see when it comes to Epstein and these accounts that she has flagged. This is a big-time danger zone for these people. This is big trouble for those associated with Epstein. Anybody who received any transaction from these sorts of shell companies that he has, these knockoff companies that he has, or anybody that received an amount of money that was not reported, they should not sleep well tonight. Because remember, before Ghislaine Maxwell got arrested, we were talking about how there were rumblings, right? Smoke, fire, here we are. And we're seeing the same thing now when it comes to the financial aspect of this case. And for my money, that is where you're going to get your bread and butter convictions if you're looking to balloon this out away from the Core 4 and Ghislaine Maxwell. If you're looking to nail some of the enablers, it's going to have to be financially. Because besides the men that Virginia and some of the other survivors have pointed the finger at, a lot of these enablers were just facilitating Epstein's crimes, being involved with him in business, etc., etc. So that is going to be the avenue that the prosecutors can go down if they're really looking to balloon this up and really shake things up. Because they can pin all of these people together via finances, transactions, etc., and therefore they can make that would make them all part of this criminal conspiracy if they brought the RICO charges. So that's why these financial investigations are very interesting and why they most likely and usually lead to more indictments. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that pertain to this episode can be found in the description box. All right, everybody, I'll be back tomorrow and we'll do it all over again. I hope you all have a great Friday night, and please, if you're out having a good time tonight, do not drink and drive. All right, everybody, until tomorrow.